Chapter 8. Gold. By the beginning of 1947, I'd been away from my hometown for over 7 years. I reflected often on the role my parents played in my upbringing and the opportunity they'd given me to pursue the path of Buddhist practice. I felt a strong desire to demonstrate my deep gratitude. There is, of course, nothing so profound as the care and affection of parents for their children. Without the care and love of my parents, who would have fed me when I was young and tended to me when I was sick? My parents looked after me when I didn't know what was going on around me and couldn't fend for myself. They raised me and taught me how to speak and think for myself. And of course, they introduced me to Buddhism. Now that I'd had a chance to put the Buddha's teachings into practice, my heart had come to realize an amazing happiness. All of this was made possible by the power of deep parental love. Honoring my parents for all they did for me was the least I could do to repay their constant care and affection. Due to my chosen vocation, I had never succeeded in giving them wealth and security like a good, faithful son normally would. Instead, I had what I considered to be the best repayment of all to offer them. I wanted to teach them about the wonders of Buddhist practice and help instill the Dhamma securely in their hearts. By coincidence at that time, I happened to meet a monk from my hometown who informed me that my mother was sick. And so it seemed appropriate that I return home and visit my parents. I also felt the absence of Ajaan Lee in my life. He taught me many inspiring Dhamma lessons and pointedly steered me in the direction of Ajaan Mun. I sincerely hoped to meet up with him when I returned. With these aims in mind, I began the long trek from the northeast region back to my hometown in Chantaburi on the southeast coast, a walking distance of over 400 miles. I covered the whole trek on foot by the quickest route possible, camping out in Dhutanga fashion along the way. Traveling in those days was arduous because the dirt roads were in a constant state of disrepair. Few motor vehicles even attempted to traverse those poor conditions, leaving the muddy, potholed tracks to foot traffic and bullock carts. When I finally arrived in Chantaburi, I took up residence at Sīlaratano Forest Monastery, the place where my life as a monk had begun 10 years before. When my parents heard of my return, they rushed to the monastery to greet me, crying while asking me how I was and why I hadn't kept in touch with them. They said they had no idea whether I was alive or dead. "You should have at least let your mother know that you were still alive," my mother said with tears streaming down her cheeks. She wiped her eyes as she looked at me reproachfully. I reminded my mother that she had cried when I left home 7 years before. So now that I was safely back, why was she still crying? I chided her that if I had continued to stay home that whole time, she would probably have cried even then. I advised her to let go of the past. I was back now, and that was all that mattered. My mother sat still, listening and blinking her eyes as they welled up with tears. She spoke to me about her failing health and how worry and concern had made her miss me even more. Had I died before setting eyes on you again, I would have been distraught. When I'm feeling sick, I cannot help thinking about my children. Should any of them be unaccounted for, I'd be beside myself with grief. Then with a timid smile, she asked, "By the way, what did you learn from Ajaan Mun when you stayed with him?" The 2 monks who had been left in charge of Sīlaratano Forest Monastery's upkeep when a previous abbot departed helped me to settle in comfortably. I had lived with them for only a few weeks when they expressed a fervent desire to visit Ajaan Mun in the northeast to pay their respects and listen to his Dhamma talks. They had questions about their meditation practice that they felt only he could answer. They were delighted that I'd returned to the monastery because it gave them a chance to pass their responsibilities on to me while they traveled north. Since I'd already spent many years with Ajaan Mun, it made sense that I offer them this opportunity. So I agreed to be the temporary abbot at Sīlaratano Forest Monastery in their absence. I dedicated the next 2 years of my life to maintaining the monastery in good order and attending to the religious needs of my parents and the lay devotees who regularly attended the monastery to offer food in the morning. I resolved from the start to take these everyday responsibilities seriously. I curtailed the wilder side of my nature and remained courteous in my speech and sympathetic in my interactions with members of the local community, patiently performing the ritual roles expected of a village abbot. At the same time, in order to create the most peaceful and secluded environment possible for monastic training, I reduced contact with the lay community to a minimum. Lay people were welcome to come to the monastery in the morning to offer food and request teachings or advice from me after I finished the meal. Otherwise, I asked that they did not visit, as I found constant daytime interruptions from the lay community to be incompatible with the quiet and seclusion required for a monk's meditation practice. My strict policy resulted in a lack of distractions for the resident monks and maintained the sanctity of their meditation environment. Following a lifelong tendency to seek seclusion and solitude, I left behind my monastic responsibilities during the cold season months and ventured alone into the nearby mountains to fully immerse myself in Dhutanga meditation practices. I refocused my attention solely on the development of deep levels of concentration and on the intensive application of wisdom techniques. I journeyed on foot through local wilderness areas for several months, living simply and in harmony with nature, relying on the kindness of small forest communities to provide sustenance for my wandering lifestyle. When the next rainy season retreat period approached, I made my way back to Sangam Forest Monastery and resumed my monastic duties as before. Following the 1948 Rains retreat, I again took the opportunity to put aside my administrative responsibilities and spend time alone in the wilderness areas to the north. By then, the heat and humidity of the monsoon season had begun to ease off, signaling the onset of the cold season. The cooler, drier weather was a welcome relief, but more relieving still was the sense of solitude experienced in the seclusion of forested mountain ranges. After months of living a sedentary life and managing the monastery's diverse affairs, I was ready to seek sanctuary in a wandering, meditative lifestyle and the peace and quiet of solitude. By the early months of 1949, I had penetrated deep into the jungle terrain of Chantaburi's northernmost district. I'd been hiking on remote trails for months, and my meditation was back to full strength. One evening, while I was seated on the ledge beneath an overhanging rock, my mind experienced an occurrence that left a lasting impression on me. I was meditating non-stop at that time, trying to uproot the remaining defilements that obstructed my path. Suddenly and unexpectedly, my mind dropped into a state of profound stillness, where not a single thought disturbed its sublime tranquility. Except for a very refined awareness that seemed to suffuse everything throughout the entire universe, absolutely nothing else appeared. The whole world appeared to be filled with this subtle quality of knowing, the effect of which was truly amazing. Whether I actively investigated the body or rested quietly in samadhi, stray thoughts did not intervene. The mind remained effortlessly bright and clear for hours. From that day forward, the mind continued to contemplate all aspects of the body for many hours at a stretch. My concentration was intense and impactful, turning into a relentless driving force as the investigations gathered momentum. Through knowledge and skill gained over time, I knew where in my mind to dig and probe. It was just a matter of precisely locating defilements and extracting them. I felt like an experienced folk doctor who knows where to look for wild roots and herbs growing deep in the jungle. All he has to do is penetrate the tangled vegetation, find them, and pull them up. In this more advanced stage of my practice, my mind remained completely disengaged from peripheral thoughts and emotions, and could thus focus exclusively on whatever appeared in its field of awareness. My body contemplations soon reached the stage where wisdom sprang into action automatically, without conscious intention. The effect was a complete absorption in those investigations both day and night. Wisdom moved through mental images of the body with speed and agility, uncovering lingering attachments, grabbing those mental fetters by the scruff of the neck, and forcefully yanking them out. The mind spun relentlessly through every part and every aspect of the body, searching for the root causes of craving and delusion. This is surely what Ajaan Mun had meant when he told me to use the noble truths to smash the body to pieces. I reached the stage where I experienced the mind as though it were totally independent and soaring freely. As amazing as the sense of unhindered freedom appeared, I was reluctant to entirely trust this perception. I felt that nothing should be taken for granted at this stage in the practice. I continued to probe deeper into the mind, giving wisdom full rein to uncover the truth. When I say the mind appeared to soar freely, I mean the mind felt as buoyant as a wisp of cotton wool floating on a cushion of air. Probing deeper into that perception, I realized that although the cotton wisp appeared to be floating independently, it actually relied on air currents to keep it aloft. Without that uplifting support, it would fall back to earth. I also realized that the current state of my practice presented a similar predicament, in the same way that the sense of floating free and independent was an illusion, because its sense of freedom was, in fact, dependent on other factors. So too were the amazing experiences in my meditation just faulty perceptions, rooted in the mind's fundamental delusion about itself. In other words, I still had crucial work left to do. Shortly after that profound realization, I moved into a shallow, cave-like opening hollowed out of the base of a cliff deep in a dense tropical forest on the south side of Bai Si Mountain, an area known locally for its deadly malaria outbreaks. The jungle was also home to many dangerous wild animals, such as elephants, tigers, leopards, bears, venomous snakes, and wild boars. I had been warned of all these dangers, but I chose to go anyway to challenge my mind's ability to respond decisively to extreme conditions. Sheltering in the cave, I pushed myself mercilessly, fasting and going without sleep for days at a time, determined not to relax my efforts until I had achieved a further breakthrough. Within days, I had come down with a severe case of malaria, which resulted in alternating bouts of high fevers and shaking chills. Throughout the duration of these punishing symptoms, the sharpness and keenness of my mind became more and more acute and perceptive. On certain occasions, my awareness seemed to disconnect from external sense contact altogether. But normally I could detect a very subtle sensation that's difficult to describe emanating from the physical sphere. My mind thus became fully focused on what appeared to be an exceedingly refined breath sensation. When I was able to hold the sensation steady at that refined level, it became increasingly fainter and more elusive as it faded in and out of awareness. Focusing intently on the faintest of those sensations, I watched them steadily become so indistinct that only a tiny trace of movement was detectable. I continued to delicately probe and question this almost imperceptible sensation until it finally faded into complete and utter stillness. All mental motion ceased. Nothing remained in the sphere of awareness. Nothing lingered to search for. Nothing was left to focus on. All attachment between that totally still awareness and the activities of body and mind had been severed. Awareness was then free, vast, and supremely empty, without limits, boundless and all-encompassing. Nothing at all enclosed or obstructed it. When everything that had permeated awareness vanished, there was only a genuine, all-pervading emptiness that contained nothing. Emptiness of this kind is a total and permanent disengagement that requires no further effort to maintain. At that unparalleled moment, awareness expressed the highest form of freedom, having absolutely let go of every vestige of primal ignorance, thus overturning the perpetual cycle of birth and death once and for all. After disabling delusion's all-encompassing network of ignorance with one powerful and decisive stroke, Wisdom's insight delivered a fatal right hook to the chin of the champion of samsaric existence, knocking it out cold, never again to rise from the mat. In the singularity of that moment, I finally came face to face with the Lord Buddha. I don't mean to boast, but that's the only way I can describe it. I realized unequivocally that attachment to the cycle of birth and death, repeated endlessly over countless lifetimes, was rooted in a universal ignorance of the truth. Free from that attachment now, the world of ignorance no longer found a foothold in an awareness that was absolutely pure and at one with Nibbāna. Beyond that, I can find no words to convey the truth, because that singular purity lies outside the realm of conventional language. Ordinary people who try to wrap their heads around it are bound to be left bewildered. I finally rid myself of delusion and confusion by battling toe-to-toe with the demon of ignorance until the power of supreme wisdom broke through its last line of defense. Supported by the combined forces of faith, effort, mindfulness, samadhi, and wisdom, all of which had been well trained during countless lives of Buddhist practice, the ramparts of ignorance were stormed, and the great demon was slain in its previously impregnable samsaric fortress. Supreme mindfulness and supreme wisdom closed all the pathways through which awareness could escape into sights, sounds, smells, tastes, tactile sensations, and thoughts. This allowed wisdom's forces to battle their way into delusion's inner sanctum and take out the central tyrant, the primary cause of all suffering. When awareness finally let go of body and mind, only the amazingly pure Dhamma remained, an occurrence inexpressively more astounding than anything I had ever experienced before in my years of meditation. The plaintive song that I had overheard a lady in the north sing many years before rang true. Suffering of body and mind consumes my thoughts and feelings. Suffering binds me so tightly. That suffering, the suffering of body and mind, had now flipped over to become ease of body and mind. The verse, "Suffering binds me so tightly," had been transformed into "Happiness embraces me so tightly." My spontaneous reaction was, "How incredible! I've seen the truth that I've sought for so long." Nibbāna is inherent within the realm of human existence, but it is not something specifically human. Nibbāna cannot be found in the elements of earth, water, fire, or wind, nor in anything of the physical universe. Figuratively, we may say that Nibbāna is a realm of absolute freedom. But in truth, Nibbāna is a natural principle innate within all of us. It has no physical characteristics whatsoever. The five senses cannot know it. Philosophy cannot reveal it. Science cannot verify it. Even extensive study of the Buddha's teachings cannot reach Nibbāna unless the teachings are diligently put into practice. Only by practicing Buddhist meditation can the mind make the adjustments needed to realize Nibbāna. All of the many past Buddhas and their countless Arahant disciples did just that, allowing the truth to arise unequivocally within their minds. If you want to dispel doubts about the ultimate consequences of your actions, you must resolve these uncertainties internally by practicing meditation until you clearly realize the truth of these things for yourself. Even doubts that have plagued you for your whole life will dissipate in a flash at the moment that realization occurs, just as perpetual darkness turns to brightness the moment a light is turned on. The truth of the Buddha's teachings will be revealed to those who practice the teachings with diligence and an unwavering determination to discover the truth. To fully realize the truth about their own potential for release from suffering, seekers of the way must strive to become spiritual warriors on the path to liberation. Their hearts need to have a firm resolve that can boldly stand up to their internal enemies, finding the strength of purpose to fight with all their might without becoming weakened or disheartened, and without retreating when the struggle appears too difficult. When this kind of fighting spirit is exhibited in the pursuit of Dhamma, then time and place are not relevant to the quest for truth. Regardless of whether it is the Buddha's age or our present age, Nibbāna can always be attained by those who earnestly follow the way to freedom. The true Dhamma always exists in the present moment, the timeless present, here and now.